If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. We hear that when reading or hearing on the news about scams that we're cautioned to look out for. If something seems too good to be true, then we shouldn't mess with it because it probably is. And it's going to be not really good for us in the end. But I wonder if sometimes some people have the same mindset perhaps about like God, faith, Christianity, the gospel, that kind of seems too good to be true. Especially as we know that the world is mixed up in all the things that St. Paul listed: anguish, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, I guess we could say exposure, vulnerability, peril, the sword, death. They're all present in the world, and yet we have this gospel, this good news of this Lord who provides for us. He feeds us. He answers all of our needs. Of course, we know that this same Jesus, he is the Son of God who came to enter into our world so that we know that he's not so distant, but he's close. That we have this God that comes close. And he came to enter into our sufferings. Jesus, too, experienced anguish and distress and persecution and famine and nakedness, peril, the sword, the cross. I did all that to bring us through those experiences. As St. Paul says, that we can conquer, be victorious overwhelmingly in the midst of those through him who has loved us. There was a philosopher in the 20th century, Jean-Paul Sartre. He was not a happy guy, very pessimistic, cynical, atheist philosopher. And he had this belief that there's no such thing as pure altruistic love. That if you gave a gift to someone, then there had to be strings attached. They had to want something in exchange. And if you received a gift, that wasn't good either, because then you're beholden to the giver, and it's not really a free gift because you've given away your freedom. Now, we probably think that all sounds crazy. And I think it is. I don't know how these people get so famous, because we know that's just not true. The giving and receiving gifts is meant to be an act of joy for both. Like, you don't give presents for Christmas and birthday or whatever to your kids in order to put them under your thumb. That's nuts. But we have this God who gives and doesn't take away our freedom in that, but invites us into the freedom of belonging to him, being in this covenant relationship. The one who came to enter into our world to bring us to himself, provide for our deepest longings, ultimately the longing for life. So we have this Jesus who we hear in our gospel today. Now, the first line, sometimes it's hard to focus on the first line because it might just be like a warm-up or something like that, especially with the multiplication of the fish and the loaves that we know so well. It says, when he heard about the death of John the Baptist, Jesus went off to a deserted place by himself. John the Baptist, one, his relative. Two, we could probably say like a colleague in ministry, so to speak. And then considering the violent way that John the Baptist, experienced his death, in his human nature, there's probably a lot to process. He had to have been saddened, of course, by that whole thing. Maybe it led him to think about his own, destiny on the cross. So I guess it makes sense that he wanted to sort of take a minute to be by himself. Maybe that experience when we're up against something hard, a loss, some big change, a move, some big challenge or struggle. Sometimes we just want to be by ourselves and not have other people bother us. Sometimes the last place we want to be when life is hard is in a crowd. So Jesus, when he heard about the death of John the Baptist, he went to a deserted place by himself. Of course, the crowds found out about this, and they met him there. And so I think maybe, as we might be tempted to think, he might be irritated by that. frustrated, angry. It says, no, he felt pity for them. Again, not pity like, oh, poor thing, but pity like a deep, heartfelt compassion and empathy. He's able to turn his own sorrow into sorrow for the people that he knew had need and were willing to come to this deserted place to be with Jesus. And he cured their sick. And then it was getting late. He didn't want to send them away to just kind of fend for themselves, but wanted to provide for them even there in their physical hunger. Jesus remained available to his people, even with what all he had maybe going on in his own life. He's willing to enter into the deserted places. I think that's true for us as well. To those places that we know we experience, go back to St. Paul, anguish, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, the sword. Of course, this passage about the loaves and the fish, it's really teeing up the great gift of himself in the Eucharist. That's where he takes, breaks, and shares the bread and the wine that become his own very body and blood, soul, and divinity. And so I think we can think about that when we come here to Mass. That maybe we come here, in a sense, to a deserted place interiorly. Maybe we're feeling just kind of dry and empty with faith, or with hope, or with charity, or with peace, or with joy. I think we see in our gospel today, the Lord wants to be present in providing for us in the deserted places of our lives. As we heard in our first reading, the Lord invites us to come to him, that we might have life, to come, that we can be renewed in the covenant relationship that he has brought us into and made us for. Maybe sometimes it just seems like it's all too good to be true. But I think in reality, it's the truth of his goodness.